It's hard to imagine that in just a matter of years, foldable devices have gone from the stuff of science fiction to actual usable daily drivers. And here we are today at Samsung's demo event following full COVID safety protocols, checking out the third generation of the company's foldables. At its Unpacked event today, the company just unveiled its full slate of products from foldables to wearables and launched the Z Fold 3 and the Z Flip 3. Of the bendy pair, the Fold 3 is the larger, more premium one, and it has been around longer than any foldable device has on the market. Since launching the Fold, Samsung has worked to improve the durability and the software of its foldable devices, which continue to be the biggest challenges for foldables in general. The Z Fold 3 doesn't just offer more software and hardware improvements, though. It's also the first of its kind to offer S Pen support for the interior pliable screen, so you can write on it without breaking the display. In addition to stylus support, the Z Fold 3 brings things like water resistance, a new under-display camera on the interior screen, as well as an overall 80% stronger build, according to Samsung. Best of all, it starts at a cheaper price than before at $17.99. First of all, given that we had very limited time to cover all four devices that were at the demo event, we focused on what is new and different here. So this is the new S Pen that's designed for the Fold. You can see Fold Edition at the top there. Now the difference here between this and other S Pens in the past is a slightly rounder nib so that it's not so sharp as to kind of tear at the screen. It's also got a retractable nib so that if you push too much pressure on it, you can see it just goes in. You can also get the S Pen Pro Edition that works with the Z Fold 3 as well, and it'll have onboard Bluetooth and stuff like that for the air command gestures that we saw debuted earlier. One thing worth noting quickly, by the way, the S Pen support's only for the inside screen and not for the cover display on the outside, so trying to draw on this or check off a list won't work. The one thing I am bummed about is that there's no onboard slot or holder for the stylus as you get on Note phones. Part of making the Z Fold 3 more durable was not only in improving the hinge, the metal frame and the hinge, but also making sure that the Gorilla Glass covering the outside is also a new material that's 50% stronger than before. This way, when you accidentally drop your very expensive phone, hopefully it'll come off without a scratch. The other thing that Samsung did with making the display stronger is that the screen protector now uses a flexible PET material that's stronger than TPU in the past. Samsung also said it redid the display stack here, so there's different layers on the display that are just reconfigured to be stronger than before. So when you're not scribbling or drawing on the screen, you're probably doing something else like taking a video call on Duo or something. In this setup, you'll be using the under display camera over here. It's a 4 megapixel sensor, so a little less sharp than all the other sensors on this device, and it's supposed to be under display, so you're not supposed to be able to see the lens there. But in certain apps, like Maps for example, it does feel like a fully immersive display. It's completely blended, but if you pay special attention to where it was before, you'll see that there's a little bit of pixelation going on, making it very clear actually that that's where the camera is. One other thing Samsung has done is to optimize the interface to just make it feel a bit better for multitasking. For example, the edge panels that have been around before can now be pinned to the side of the screen, sort of like a taskbar in a desktop OS like Chrome or Windows. There's also some software here to just make apps work better in this big screen. One of the biggest complaints about apps on this sort of aspect ratio is that they don't always make use of all the space. So in the Samsung Labs settings, you can automatically customize app aspect ratios. If you want, you can pick the app's default, or for example, if you're using something like Instagram, or in this case, Photos, you can choose the default aspect ratio when you're launching those apps in the bigger screen. So this is an example of what Flex Mode looks like on the Z Fold 3, which is basically splitting the screen in half so that you have a usable space on the left instead of just kind of expanding this to full screen. But then when you've expanded it and open it completely, you notice how that quickly takes over and expands to take over the entire screen. Flex mode, full screen mode. So that swiftness in switching between flex mode and full screen mode that you saw just now is partly also to do with the processor in this. In the US at least, we know that this will be running with a Snapdragon 888 processor. Elsewhere in the world, it might use some other chipset. It's not clear yet because Samsung's wording seems to be just a 5 nanometer based CPU for the phone. There's a triple 12 megapixel camera system on the rear that allows you to switch between ultra wide, regular, and telephoto. Front, there is a 10 megapixel selfie that is triggered by my palm facing up, just like other Samsung phones. And it's better and sharper than the 4 megapixel one on the inside of the screen. So what you are looking at here is a 7.6-inch dynamic AMOLED display on the inside with a 22.5 by 18 aspect ratio. It's got a 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate, which means scrolling through your Twitter and Instagram feeds will look smoother, hopefully. On the outside, we've got a 6.2-inch HD Plus dynamic AMOLED screen. It's also got a 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate, so you can keep scrolling through your Twitter on the outside and have the same sort of smooth animation. Samsung also says this is thinner and lighter than previous generations, and it definitely feels easier to maneuver with one hand. Unfolded, it is 6.4 millimeters thin, and it weighs 271 grams, which is about 0.6 pounds.
Of course, there are some things that we couldn't test here at the hands-on event, including battery life. I'm not about to run it for more than 3 hours straight. Also, water resistance. There weren't any demos set up for us to dunk the phone in water. So these are things we will need to test out in the real world to know for sure. At 3 generations in, Samsung has clearly learned a lot. And the Z Fold 3, at least based on this early preview, certainly feels very refined. But does that mean Samsung has perfected its foldable formula? And is the Z Fold 3 ready for the mainstream? We'll really need to get a review unit out in the real world for testing before we can really get a sense for that. So stay tuned for that, as well as more coverage from Engadget.com.